So welcome back to Third Age Reforged, and this is going to be, I think, something a little bit different. Now, I was going to initially save this for later in the month for obvious reasons, but I think I will be doing it now, mainly because I don't know how long my 0.96.1 content is going to last me. It really kind of depends on what I'm sent within the next week or so. If I don't get a lot, then I will probably transition over to 0.97. I am also going to try and be in more stuff myself, but it is difficult because there's essentially only 2 days of the week that I can play on, and even when I do play, there's no guarantee that the match I'm in will not crash and then also be fit for showing. So there is potentially going to be a little bit of turbulence as we move from 0.96 to 0.97, but regardless, I still do have a couple more things I can show on 0.96 before we have to contend with that. But regardless, the name of this replay that I received was called Halloween, so I would assume that there's going to be something a little bit different going on. This is on Thranduil's Halls, but I am told by the player that sent this to me, who is Master Blaster, this battle does not work out in the same way as a regular Thranduil's Halls battle does, so we'll see what he means by that as we go along. But he is playing as Arthedain. It's going to be a 3v5, so it's a very large-scale battle at 43,000 frames as well. So he's got some Arthedain pikemen with the breastplate armour upgrade. He's also got some Wardens of the North in here, some Dunedain Rangers. They're all packed very tightly together. He's got some Dunedain Mounted Company, which we've seen in the past be pretty damn good in melee for lance cavalry like them. Dunedain with their slightly higher skill than regular humans. We've also got some Knights of Innuminas, of course. Again, the toughest knights in the game, I think. Them and the Carmel's Dragon Knights can tank a lot of damage indeed. And it's a little bit difficult to sort of pick out individual units from each other. He's got some Dunedain Peacekeepers, he's got some Arthedain Marksmen again with the armour upgrades. Aside from that, he's also got some men-at-arms with the first level of armour upgrades, so just the breastplate rather than the full plate armour. He's also got some Grey Company, which are currently hiding obviously mounted rangers, so fairly standard for Arthedain. They've got some, like all of their standard units with some armour upgrades, they've got some pikes, they've got some good cavalry, and then they've also got some good ranged units as well with their rangers and their Wardens of the North. Meanwhile, over here in the middle, we have Lyndon, played by Son of the Dunedain. He's got some 4 Lyndon archers up here on this verge, and then he's also got some more 4 Lyndon archers up here, so we'll see how he approaches things. Last time we saw a battle on Thranduil's Halls, of course, the Lyndon player really disgraced himself by abandoning his ally. The Lyndon Guard are here as well, obviously good hybrid units. Lyndon very well known for their hybrid units. Mithlon Pikemen. It's going to be a little bit difficult, I think, to see some of these units with all these trees around the place, but fortunately Lyndon don't have as many hidden units as the likes of Mirkwood. More pikes, both Mithlond and 4 Lyndon. Also got a High Elven Catapult, some 4 Lyndon Pikemen here, some Lyndon Guard who have placed their stakes in this gap, which is a decent move. It means the cavalry won't be able to charge right up the gut of your defence. And then we've got some Mithlon Marines back here as well, some 4 Lyndon Marines. I'm not sure whether I've missed anything, it's possible. But the final army, final defending quote-unquote army we have, is going to be Nubiwan, who is playing as Erebor, so he's got some Ironfoot pikes over here, so more pole arms, a lot of pikes here for these 3 armies. Also got some Dragon Slayers of Ered Mithrin, which is where Dane is going to be, and obviously the Dragon Slayers are very, very strong, one of those dwarven units that just, it's a step above sort of regular infantry. And then we've got some Blacklock Engineers over here. A step above regular elite infantry, I should say. It's several steps above regular infantry. More Blacklock Engineers, so I think he's got 2 units of them, which is a big investment, potentially, but also potentially a very deadly one. As we have a look down upon more Ironfoot crossbows, we've got more Ironfoot spears, so a lot of Ironfoot units, the backbone of the Erebor army. Some Ironfoot halberds as well, so some good AP polearms. Erebor legionaries, which they are, in terms of cost, very similar to the likes of the Castamir's Legion, so you can imagine what sort of quality they offer you. I think they're actually slightly better than the Castamir's Legion individually, as you might expect from the dwarves. And then we've got more elites, so Sons of Durin, Highborns of Erebor, Ex-Guard of Erebor, and then some Ironfoot warriors. So lots of elites, as you might expect, and they're going to need it because they are outnumbered by 2 armies. So let's see what the attackers have brought to the field. So we've got Tundra's Fox, who is playing as Harad, and he is spread out. He's got lots of Haradrim Spearmen, Haradrim Archers. I imagine these armies are going to be lower tier, significantly lower tier, but then they're going to have tons and tons of men. So Muhad Beast Hunters as well. Trollmen, fairly spooky unit in their own right. I've also got some Champions of Nafrat, and then the reason for his army being very small indeed is the fact that we've got the Mumakil on the field today. Potentially very devastating, of course, but also have the potential to die pretty quickly if they're focused down. Meanwhile, we've got Waterman, who is playing as the Witch Realm of Angmar. He's got 3 units of the Guardians of Khan Doom, very, very dependable. And then the rest of his army is down here, so he's got some Trolls, which are spread out, some Trolls of Gundabad, and some Trolls of Angmar with their big shields. He's also got some Witch Realm Pikemen in loose, and then he's got a lot of Barrow Wights. Seems like they're all lying down. They've got some Angmar Halberds with them as well. A lot of Barrow Wights, in fact, so that's, you know, spooky as well. Let's have a look what's going on over here. So who is this army? This is Lord Kif playing as Rudour. He's got some Essenmoor's Trollhunters. It's been a little while actually since we've seen Rudour, and I quite like them, so it's good to see them back. Essenmoor's Trollhunters is one of their better units in my opinion as well. Spears crossed with very effective javelins. I've also got some Pyranodyne Pikes and some Pyranodyne Berserkers, some Witch Realm Enslavers, so some pretty strong units all around. And then we've got some Dunman Hunters as well. Possible to have quite a lot of hidden units with Rudour as well, and also the trees are over here, so it's going to get very difficult to see a lot of these units, I think. We've got Orc Warboss 155, who is playing as Rune, so he's got a full line. After Gamprim, he's got a Catapult. And he's also got some Eastron Clansmen with both levels of armour upgrade over here. Some Variag Mercenaries and some Eastron Clansmen over here. They're not going to get the easiest shots, though, from here. The water looks really weird at night time, I must say. And then finally, the final army that we're going to be able to see glimpses of is going to be Mirkwood, played by Frodo. So Mirkwood have betrayed the good realms of Middle-earth, Thranduil, turning to the dark side. We've got some Hiri Peng, some Therni Tower, some Meta Ilaz Gellan, Hiri Ek, and then a few units of Megil Erin. There's bound to be some hidden units as well. It's actually weird that we can even see the Therni Tower. I guess they're already moving. But yeah, so Mirkwood are here as well. So I will make a little cut here because it's, again, on Thranduil's Halls, it takes the attackers quite some time traditionally to sort of traverse this area down here and get into a position where they can genuinely move forwards. We'll see how this one pans out. It's nighttime as well, and you can actually see stuff, which is odd. I have to say the game runs much, much smoother when reshade isn't on, even if you do lose a little bit of the colour vibrancy, but it would appear that we've got the start of this battle, and it's somewhat interesting. You can see that the catapult already firing in at the Barrow Wights. We can see the Nar Rim opening up on the Arthedain archer companies which are up on the hills, but the defenders being extremely aggressive here, which is probably what he meant by this battle working out differently. We can see the Arthedain are forming up a front line down here in the basin. Now this could work out because it will potentially allow all of these archers to get much better shots off, but this does of course expose the defenders to the attacking archer companies as well, of which Rune brought a fair amount, so we'll see how well they can do. But there is also the matter of this cavalry, and the Dunedain Mounted Company is coming forwards. Again, they need to be careful because there are a lot of anti-cavalry units they could get caught on. The Witch Realm Pikemen, the Loka Gambrim, the Trolls would also do a lot of damage in sustained melee. They can't afford to slow down either because otherwise the archers will get them. And you can see that several of them also getting grilled. That wasn't the best charge. It looked as if he changed his target right at the end there and paid the price dearly for that. It's possible that he didn't, and that the pathfinding was just such that he had to try and... the cavalry was trying to hit the unit while the unit was still moving, and it went a bit weird. But it looked as though he changed target right at the end and paid the ultimate price for that. That cavalry utterly wasted. The Knights of Illuminus charge forward into the Trolls, and off the charge the Knights of Illuminus should do a decent amount of damage, and they won't go down easily even under Troll attacks, so a decent cheeky little charge there. But the Trolls are not showing any signs of slowing down, and with this outer defence they could punch through pretty quickly, but they're going to need support. If support is not forthcoming, they will be overwhelmed by all of this Arthedain infantry. The Peacekeepers have got a lot of skill, and there are a lot of Arthedain men-at-arms on hand to back them up. Now this would be a very risky move because he's going to charge right into the front of this infantry over here. Again, it doesn't look as though he actually ordered a charge. It looks as though he was just sort of moving down the hill, which again is a mistake. I have to say the Arthedain cavalry play here has not been on point at all. And they can't afford to waste units like Knights of Illuminus in such a fashion. Already a couple of mistakes have been made, and that doesn't bode well for the defenders in this sort of situation. They will be able to save themselves though. The Knights of Illuminus are not like regular cavalry units. They will be able to hold themselves together and keep themselves in good condition for later in the battle because of how survivable they are. Meanwhile, these Trolls have not had a good time of it either, so potentially some of the best damage dealers from the attacker's point of view have already been taken down to size. You can see that the Trolls over here trying to get to the catapult crew, but I mean that's never going to go well for them. All of these Linden infantry units are just going to overwhelm them, so reckless use of the Trolls there. The catapult's a juicy target, sure, but You don't want to waste your trolls going after a catapult that you're not going to be able to kill. Arthedain marksmen still trading blows with the runic archers, but unfortunately abandoning the defensive position while it does offer a different dimension to this battle, you do deprive yourself of the cover that these sort of walls and defensive positions give you. It looks as though Arthedain are the ones which have decided to take this upon themselves, but unfortunately this does give Rune and Mirkwood the ideal excuse to essentially use their extensive skirmish power that they have brought. So while this is appreciated that Arthedain have made this fight go a little bit differently to how Thranduil's Halls usually works out, they are taking a bit of a beating for it. These Arthedain men-at-arms fighting on the front line against the Eastron Clansmen. Eastron Clansmen, as I've said many times before, very good as far as militia units go, especially when you upgrade their armour, but they aren't as good as standard line infantry still. So the Arthedain men-at-arms, particularly with the backup of these Peacekeepers, are going to be able to do a good job on them. The Faradrim Spearmen actually already wavering in this sort of situation. Again, maybe not the ideal fight for them to be in either, because they are militia spears through and through. You know, basically only a small step up at that from Orc fodder, so Harad often bring them because of how cheap and numerous they are. Linden's cavalry is now coming out. The Mithlon Lancers, they're fighting. They need to stay out of melee if they can help it, especially with the Barrow-wights, because those javelins could be really useful actually for taking out some important targets. Let's just get a look from on high at what's going on. You can see, well, we have been seeing a lot of crossbow bolts, a lot of arrows flying from the defenders, and they are doing a lot of damage here because they do have a much better angle than they otherwise would on the attackers as they move forward. One problem if you set up the front lines on all of these choke points is that the archers often don't have a very good angle to shoot. But this is not the case here. But unfortunately, units like the Barrow-wights are still going to be moving forward. And Arthedain's first line, it hasn't really worked out for them, let's be honest. The Knights of Illuminus are still alive, getting some nice charges. To be fair, it's only really where the Barrow-wights are that the defenders are having a real problem, because the rest of this initial attack has been made up of Harad Spearmen and Eastron Clansmen. And even the Barrow-wights, honestly, not having the easiest time of it. There's a lot of forces they have to hack and slash their way through. And the Peacekeepers, as I've said, they're pretty good. You know, as far as spears goes, they're not as good as like the Elven spears, but they're still not half bad. And if they can kill off these Barrow-wights actually with the support of their ranged units, this would have been a very worthwhile outer defence, because the Barrow-wights are such an important tool that Angmar can use to really make it difficult. Like when it turns into a battle of attrition with the Barrow-wights involved, Angmar 9 times out of 10 are going to have the better of that fight. The Knights of Illuminus are just wading through this arrow fire. It's what they're really very good at, although with their backs turned, their shields won't be added to their extensive armour values, and also there are Witch Realm Pikemen over here. Again, that's a bit of a misplay here, I think, from the Knights of Illuminus. They need to stay well away from the Witch Realm Pikemen. That's one of the few units that will kill them off very quickly, and unfortunately, Master Blaster has decided to try and charge through the Witch Realm Pikemen, which is going to take its toll on the Knights of Illuminus. And to be fair, only a few of them died. It could have been far worse than it was, but even so, that's still a very sloppy piece of play there. I expect better from him, to be honest with you. Megil E. Erin getting onto the front line. That's going to cause a few more problems for this outer Arthedain defence. The Megil E. Erin as Elven units have got the skill to easily defeat Arthedain men-at-arms. The Peacekeepers are still on the front line, but again, the Spear Malus will come into play more and more. More Eastron Clansmen pouring forwards with both levels of armour upgrades this time, adding more numbers. Bit of friendly fire there from the Elven Catapult. The Knights of Illuminus, now only 10 of them remaining, definitely being focused down by the arrows. I'm very surprised that Master Blaster's cavalry play has been so poor, actually. Arthedain men-at-arms now pouring forward. Another unit of them coming in to reinforce this front line. Not sure whether that's going to be enough to make this front line hold, honestly. Combination of Witch Realm Pikes, Barrow-wights, and also Eastron Clansmen going around the side, Megil E. Erin. It's asking a lot of this basic infantry unit, but you know, they're pretty decent. There are also these dismounted Knights of Illuminus on the front line, which are blending in. Only 27 of them, but they are also extremely tough. There's some Grey Company over here. They need to stay out of melee. Like this, he needs to get a handle on his cavalry micro here, otherwise he's going to lose the Grey Company for nothing. The Eastron Clansmen I mean, you can now see the pike companies are starting to come down from the hill. And the Eastern Clansmen, not in an ideal position. They've overextended themselves a little bit. When a militia unit overextends themselves, they tend to find themselves in a bit of a sticky situation. I assume the Grey Company's already out of ammunition if they're being charged into Eastern Clansmen, or he's just trying to rout them quickly, which either one of those is possible, but you know, if the Grey Company still have ammunition and you're sending them into melee, that's very foolhardy. There's also some Black Wolds here from Rudau that have come forward. Now the Black Wolds, their AP won't help them much against the Grey Company, but their huge attack values will. Very much the equivalent of the Uruk-hai Berserkers, and they're trying to get in behind the Arthedain pike lines, which will very quickly cause the collapse of a lot of these pike companies if they are able to get a rear charge. You can see in the background there through the trees the Mumakil are looming large, and at this point you can see that several portions of the Arthedain front line are getting surrounded as the Mumakil start to rush forth. There's a huge amount of arrows just flying back and forth. The Mumakil already dying, actually. From what? Mithlon Lancers? That would explain it. Javelin fire. There's also pikes here, and the pikes are doing a huge amount of damage here to the Mumakil, along with the Javelin fire. A crash! And no one was surprised at all. But regardless, as I was saying before, the Mumakil are dropping like flies, because they are sort of caught in pikes, and that anti-cavalry bonus will be applying to them. And they're also taking a litany of ranged fire, from javelins, from crossbow bolts, from arrows. It is also worth saying that because of the crash, I was able to sort of see that the Grey Company have been firing, so they'd have at least used up all their ammunition before they're being used in melee. But even so, charging them in to Black Wolds is maybe not recommended. But you can see that the outer defence at this point is starting to crumble. We can see that, you know, the blocks of Arthedain pikes and infantry are starting to be surrounded now, admittedly only by a few individual units like Eastern Clansmen, but as soon as that starts to happen, it's probably a bad thing. Let's see how this is actually going from the defenders' point of view. So if we have a look back here, we can see the Narim overlooking the assault. There's also some Camels, Dragon Knights, which we missed before, so you know, sort of knights for the attackers. Could be very useful when they break through into the second fielded area. But yeah, so we can see pretty much at this point the outer defence has been dealt with. Let's hope it doesn't crash as I move forwards again. Now that the Mumakil are all dead, I would imagine it's probably not going to happen. Mumakil corpses, it's possible to get infantry stuck on them as well, so it is worth saying that the attackers might have to try and go around them in order to get everyone. That High Elven Catapult's still dishing out some damage as well, getting out some good hits. Going right into the Barrow Whites as well, which the Barrow Whites have not had an easy time of it. This defence has proven to be pretty decent at thinning out their ranks, but the defenders have had to pay a pretty high price for that. You can see some Arthedain marksmen, presumably they're out of ammo at this point. This Arthedain pike block is still sort of trying to hold on, but ultimately I think the combination of range fire and the sheer numbers at this point are going to lead to the downfall of Arthedain's outer defence. Arthedain in general don't have much left. They've committed a huge amount of themselves to holding back the attackers at this point. And to be fair, the defenders are 5% ahead as a result, but they still need to kill yet more of the attackers to keep that advantage, because Arthedain's army is about to crumble. The Dunedain Rangers are still hiding. Still some Mithlon Lancers. The Grey Company are still here trying to get some charges off. Trying to do some damage to the Thurny Tower, who are wavering. Getting some routes here might also be a worthwhile endeavour, especially on depleted units who are unlikely to... some Haradrim Spearmen falling back there. But now we shall see the secondary defence back here, and now it's going to be over to Linden and Erebor as their infantry, because a lot of Arthedains at this point have been expended. And, you know, I think maybe Erebor with all their elites could prove to be a very important part of this fight going forwards. If the attackers do lose too much of their resources getting stuck on these Arthedain units out here, contending with those Dwarven elites could be tricky. This Grey Company is being shot at this point, their annoyance no longer being tolerated, and arrow fire should be enough to lay them low pretty damn quickly. Arthedain marksman trying at this point just to pin the attackers in place to allow what's left of the Arthedain archers to do their thing. The Dunedain Rangers are still hiding, but I'm positive that the attackers will still have some archers left. The Dunedain Rangers at this point revealing themselves, and their damage could be significant. They've still got some Troll Slayers as well, so Arthedain are not out of this just yet. Was that a cancelled shot? Because I didn't see the projectiles leave the bows. That's another crash. I'm concerned at this point. I really despise how unfortunately unstable this has become. And I was told that this was a battle which played smoothly as well, so this is as good as it's likely to get for a sort of 8-player fight now. You can hear how often, I'm sure that this comes across in how I often start these looking forward to them and then my will is just destroyed by the middle of it. It's really unfortunate, but there's so little I can do about it. I'm so sorry. But also, because this is a problem which only myself and a handful of other people are likely to have, this is not an issue which is likely to be resolved at all. In fact, it's likely to get worse as more stuff is added, so I can only apologise for that, both now and in the future. But I'm not going to zoom into this area down here because it seems to just be a cause of crashing, so unfortunately I won't be able to zoom in on that fight anymore. And I know people want me to zoom in on those fights, but I just can't because it crashes. So I've also turned the graphics down to bargain basement. Fortunately, the darkness kind of covers it up, but the trees are still very obviously now 2D sprites. But yeah, like I say, there's nothing I can do. I wish it was different. I didn't used to have to resort to this sort of thing, but alas, now I do. One of the reasons why I'd like to get into another game other than Third Age Reforged is potentially so that I can record a game that doesn't have these technical issues. I love Third Age Reforged a lot, but it is extremely frustrating when this sort of thing starts to happen, because it takes so long to make these, and it just gets made so much longer and so much more frustrating when you're subjected to consistent crashing. And also then you have to avoid some of the more cinematic angles which people want to see, and I have to say that I can't do them, which is unfortunate. But regardless, now with the new and improved 2D trees of Mirkwood, we will be getting into the second layer, and it's worth saying that we've still got 30,000 frames left to go, so that's plenty more time for which more crashes can occur. We do at least have the enemy now pushing forwards, the Barrow Wights shambling forth, but they're going to meet a Dwarven front line at this point. It's worth saying that as we get stuck in a tree, the Arthedain's army is now mostly gone. The Barrow Wights, however, are exhausted. They've taken quite a lot of punishment as they've gone through this area. Obviously the crossbow bolts, the arrow fire, raining down on all the attacking armies as they came forwards. Now they have to deal with a sturdy Dwarven front line. And this is another interesting thing. Usually the defenders set up along here and are slowly pushed back, but this time the Dwarves have gone for a line a little bit further back. Now this does of course mean that this sort of defensive position up here could just be focused down and overwhelmed. But we'll see. It's fine for Halbert's taking some damage over there. Interestingly enough, he's gone for a sort of long front line. We'll see how that goes. Trollshaw axe throwers, who have revealed themselves. Obviously, unlike the Hrandine Berserkers, they're not great in melee at all. They also don't have a shield, terrible at taking archer fire. But they are a cheaper axe thrower. And against the dwarves in particular, the Rudar AP could be very useful. The Hashari Shadows have come forward. The Haradrim equivalent to the Grey Company, basically, mounted rangers. And you can see that the dwarves have now been coaxed into attacking as a result of the axe throwers. Also the cavalry. There's some Thurney Tower. There's a bunch of projectiles raining down, and I can tell from the model of that projectile that it was the Blacklock Engineers. So they're somewhere. Thurney Tower sort of trying to slip in behind enemy lines. They need to be careful though, because there's still some defensive cavalry which could just as easily shut them down. But the Hashari Shadows are going to be a real menace, getting in behind the lines, particularly if they can get into a Linden area of the battlefield with their lower armour values. But the Dwarven front line is now forming up a more traditional position. You can see there the models of the axes being thrown, the Trollshaw axe throwers getting in there. The Barrow Wights not really making too many inroads against the Ironfoot Halberds though, so for now the Dwarven front line has held out okay. Let's see if we can just go and avoid that central pit where the Mumakil were, because that's now Crash Central. Dunedain Trollslayers are reloading. Again, I really like the aesthetic of the Dunedain Trollslayers, the javelins, the sort of darker armour compared to the Rangers, and also those battle axes they pull out in melee. raining down some javelins onto a selection of units. Baltroth Tribesmen and Rudar Axemen maybe not the most ideal target for Dunedain Troll Slayers, but they are still doing a decent amount of damage. Shaken as well. Again, I would like to go down there, but I can't, because that's where it's crashed twice now, so I refuse. The ones to the north are firing. And with their AP missiles, if they select the right targets, they could be real damaging. There's only one Knight of Illuminas left, and he won't last too much longer, you would imagine. Still quite a few reserves across the river. A lot of the Rudar forces still. Some Therny Tower. And obviously there's still some Haradrim further back. Reinforcements moving over here. The Ironfoot Spears. Arrows flying forth. Still this central position, the attackers none too eager to advance into Linden's clutches for good reason. Linden, of course, very well known for their expertise in melee. Then we can see the Trolls of Angmar came forward, but maybe not so suited for taking on this many Ironfoot Halberds. Trolls can push through phalanx lines better than most. There's some Blacklock Engineers over there. But unfortunately, when it's this thick, they just tend to get bogged down in them, and of course the AP from the Ironfoot Halberds, in addition to the Erebor Legionaries being over here, meant the Trolls were always likely to burn out pretty quickly. Over here we can see the Barrow-wights' defeat still a distinct possibility, and all of these Barrow-wights actually slowly but surely being worn down. But they will be taking their pound of flesh as well. Erebor holding the line over here though. There's actually some Flag Rim here on the front line, as the Barrow-wights continue to try and push. But a combination here of AP from the Flag Rim and the Rudar Axemen coming forward, and that's not a combination the Dwarves will like fighting all that much, but they have the numbers here to withstand this for now. There's another unit, well that might be the same unit actually, of Trollshore Axe Throwers trying to get into a position where they can throw their payload. Again, Axe Throwers good against the Dwarves, that AP damage. Mithlon Lancers, so I would assume the Hashari Shadows were shut down. They could have been going after the High Elven Catapult, this Mithlon Pikeman back there. Already they've sort of started to think about retreating back to the halls, you can tell. You can see now, look at that water quality on lowest. Oof. But there is a runic catapult across the way, and as often happens on this map, setting up a piece of attacking artillery over here is ideal, because the defenders have to defend this position over here. They have to put themselves in the artillery's harm's way, otherwise they will leave gaps for the attackers to just sort of flood in. So they need to hope the catapult misses, really. They're also taking arrow fire from a unit of Hiri Peng. Again, less than ideal. Noldering Guard. You can see up here the Fallen Archers still firing away. Still making it difficult for the attackers. You can actually see down there in the pike block, but also the crash zone. The Arthedain Pikemen and the Dunedain Troll Slayers, as well as some Ironfoot Spears actually. Victory seems certain for them down there at this point. So Arthedain have really committed themselves further forwards, and they've reaped some rewards from that. The Narum are coming forward, but they're having to fight another unit of Troll Slayers. And the Troll Slayers aren't something you can take on with just any old unit. Good melee stats, AP as well. Haradrim Archers doing their best to skirmish down the Wardens of the North. And they should be successful eventually with the numbers that they're in. But the real problem that the defenders have is as soon as this outer defence here falls, the attackers will have license to go all the way around. There are some Highborns of Erebor here, but a single unit of Dwarven Elites won't stop the Horde, which now it seems as though the attackers are starting to move forward a lot more of their forces from across the other side of the river. Rune sending forward a lot more of their men, as is Harad. Harad have actually got some of their forces all the way back there, some Hashari at that, melee Hashari. So good to see some assassins. That skill will be useful to match up to Linden and the Dwarves. The Barrow-wights are now surrounded, however, so one of the more significant tools that the attackers had is starting to burn out in greater numbers. Down there are of course the Rudar Axemen and the Flag Rim still trying to push through, but the Dwarves will not be giving up this position so easily. The Erebor Legionaries, not the sort of unit that you can just barge out the way. Axe Guard, more Legion. Again, I'll be curious to see what the defenders do here, because eventually you would imagine Arthedain's, at this point, paper-thin defence over on the other choke point is bound to fall at some point. More arrow fire coming in there. There goes the Angmar General at the hands of the Troll Slayers and the Wardens of the North. Ooh. And Angmar losing their general could be fairly significant. I mean, it must be said that Angmar's army has probably taken the brunt of the casualties thus far. There's still some Guardians of Khan Doom back there, and they're not the easiest to rout anyway. But Rune, Rudawa and Harad still with plenty of resources at their disposal. These Fallen Archers still have some ammunition, which is good for the defenders, as they are trying to skirmish down some of Mirkwood's army, which Mirkwood will still have some of their melee infantry as well. You can see there the thicker projectiles from the Blacklock Engineers moving in. There's routing units all over the place. I'm very impressed, actually. I'm sad that I cannot zoom in on this fight over here, because it certainly has been a significant one. Arthur Dane still fighting down here in the gully. And those Arthur Dane pikemen really earning their keep. But now the Variag mercenaries are shooting into the backs with fire arrows. I would imagine this is going to be the end of this defensive position at this point. The Troll Slayers, there aren't many of them left. Over here there are some more Ironfoot Spears. Dundine Troll Slayers and the Wardens of the North are over there, but it's going to be a matter of numbers at this point, a numbers game, and I don't believe that Arthur Dane can really afford to hold out for too much longer, which will sort of necessitate some form of retreat, which is interesting because all of these units over here are still engaged. These Barrow Wights still fighting, and you can see that even though the Barrow Wights have essentially been in a situation they haven't been able to win for some time, they're still fighting on. Corpses all over the place. What's going on down here? Well, I think a unit of Erebor legionaries pushed down here, and ultimately now they've been destroyed by the Black Wolds. So now is the time for the defenders to choose. Will they fall all the way back to the halls, or will they continue to try and fight outside? I think the decision has been made. Well, I'm not so sure actually. I mean, Arthur Dane's forces at this point are looking very battered and bruised. Highborns of Erebor over there. Some Fallen Archers getting up onto the ramp. I don't think they have any ammunition left. Ooh, now this could be a problem for the defenders. The Cumwall's Dragon Knights are moving forward. They're not the easiest thing to bring down. But instead of going after the Trolls, well, they've actually lost their bottle. They're not going to go forwards and try and kill off some of these units. A charge into the Highborns of Erebor would be extremely good, but no, looks as though Orc Warboss is not going to do that. Or if he is, he's going to charge into the Fallen Archers, which, I mean, they're out of ammunition, I think. They've got their swords out, so I don't think Son of the Dunedain will actually care all that much if they are lost. And if they distract the Cumwall's Dragon Knights long enough, and indeed, yeah, this is it, the full retreat back to the halls. So those Fallen Archers being left as a rear guard to try and deal with the Cumwall's Dragon Knights. I think now Orc Warboss is kind of seeing that the real targets are over here. And there was still some Dwarven units who actually became shaken there. The Barrow Wights are now being reinforced by a ton of these units over here. They're going to be able to save some of these halberds and pikes, but some units will have to stay behind. A unit of Blacklocks, some Ironfoot crossbows, some halberds. I mean, they are going to have to leave things behind, and that is the unfortunate truth here for the defenders. And they can't really afford to lose too much. They are still ahead by 4%, but we'll see. Now you can see the Wardens of Elos Tyrian have revealed themselves, those rangers, so it could be that if the attackers get too greedy here, which it looks as though Frodo has, he's committed forward individual units, and they're being focused down. Not a good time for this Mirkwood infantry. And the Haradrim Spearmen are here in support, but the Haradrim Spearmen, with all the best will in the world, unlikely to make too much of a dent on Linden units. I mean, they could catch the 4 Linden pikemen out of formation, which they have. Ironfoot units getting back. I'd be interested to see what they're actually intending to do here. Are they going to try and hold the outer section? I kind of hope they don't fall back inside the halls, because this looks... They are, though, aren't they? This looks real ugly. But, you know, that's the price I pay for having to be on lowest graphics. That stability. Haradrim Spearmen. They did manage to catch out these Fall Linden Pikemen, did manage to get a partial surround as well. Again, these pikes have essentially been left behind as rear guards. The defenders have had to leave a lot of units behind in order to make this retreat a possibility. Time will tell whether that turns out to be worth it. I mean, oftentimes when we get back to the final stand all the way back here, the defenders don't really have enough to make it worth it. This time they've got a large portion of their army. Erebor and Linden still have an awful lot left. Still those Mithlon Lancers running around as well. That was not a very good charge. Most of the cavalry unit made contact with their own unit of infantry. It was still enough to rout the Haradrim Spears though. Goes to show how strong they are. Some javelins being used by the Mithlon Lancers into the Carmel's Dragon Knights. That's not a good place for the Dragon Knights to be. They need to steer well clear of the Fall Linden Pikemen. As the attackers continue to just pour forwards. Highborns of Erebor continuing to move away. Looks like they did get a charge from the Dragon Knights at some point because they have lost some men. Iron for Halberds. The Wardens of the North are still out here. Do they still have ammunition? If they do, it might be worthwhile trying to kill off the Dragon Knights if they come forwards. This here is going to be a final stand of the Dwarves. Those Blacklocks not doing much. But yeah, defeat at this point seems certain. Being overwhelmed. That could be enemy archers as well. It is. It's Dragon's Wrath Crossbowmen. Using Dragon's Wrath Crossbowmen on a unit which you're obviously going to overwhelm anyway could be construed as a bit of a waste. Dragon's Wrath Crossbows is the sort of unit that can win you the game late on. But if you use up too much of their ammo, they don't have a lot of ammunition. There's still these Blacklocks which seem to be blending in. Meanwhile, these units over here, which initially were taking a bit of a battering from the Wardens of Alos Tyrion, are now only having to chew their way through a unit of heavily depleted Fall Linden Pikemen. Still those Mithlon Lancers, which slowly but surely will get kills with their javelins over time. While over here, if we can get into the right position, we can see that some Flagrim fighting off against the Fall Linden Archers. Usually Flagrim not great against the Elves, but the Fall Linden Archers are just archers that are out of ammunition after all. They're better in melee than the equivalent sort of basic human archers, but even so, it's still not what they're designed for. They might still get some good kills on the Flagrim though, we shall see. Guardians of Khan Doom moving forwards. Still attackers pushing across the river. Seems to be Brudau sort of bringing up the rear with some champions of Nafarat from Tundra's Fox as well. Still a lot of attacking resources left. We'll see how well they can hold up. Mithlon Lancers. I mean, at this point, the Blacklock Engineers have been sort of surrounded. There are also Trollmen over here, so unfortunately for them, they really don't stand a chance. We'll see how many kills they manage to get in the late game. I would imagine at this point the percentages have flipped. But it's dead even. The defenders may very well still be ahead because routing units are much more likely to have an effect on the attackers. But even so, this is good news for the attackers. Closing that percentage. Haradrim Archers shooting the majority of their ammunition to that grass verge. Now at this point, the defenders need to just sort of fall everything back, I think, because they're sort of committing individual units, sending them essentially to their doom. Although here it looks as though they might very well try and kill off this pocket of Mirkwood resistance. As the Axe Guard charge in there, but they're going to need to get a surround up, they're going to need to kill them quickly, and yeah, it's not going to be worth it. It's a waste of Axe Guard, that. Because, I mean, these units along the outside here, they're not likely to achieve much at all. See, there are some Troll Slayers. Potentially going to try and go in to deal with the Guardians of Khan Doom, but the Guardians of Khan Doom will be reinforcing this Mirkwood infantry at this point. Some Wardens of the North over here as well, though not many of them. Highborns of Erebor are not a unit you want to leave behind out here either. Certainly not sort of just basic fodder, and at this point, yeah, this is going to be a waste, unfortunately. The Doomdine Troll Slayers, there aren't enough of them, really. If there were a full unit of them, they would be enough to give the Guardians of Khan Doom pause. But as it is, certainly not the case. And at this point, these outer units are just going to be bled out. I think they should have just tried to rapidly retreat everything they could. More resources for the late game. The blue arrow over here, which I've just noticed on the radar, what is that? Mythlon Lancers. Well, they could still be a factor. There's some Ironfoot Warriors. Getting into the Variag Mercenaries, and the Dwarves will win that comfortably. They do still have something of a front line, but I feel as though the Megil, Yeren, and also Guardians of Kharndoom will eventually push their way through. Although the Erebor Legionaries, actually, I often praise the Guardians of Kharndoom, but in this case they are outmatched. There are some Wardens of the North in here as well, tipping the balance even further into the defenders' favour. Ironfoot Pikes, it may be that I was wrong. The attackers are a little bit stretched still, although the Dragon Knights really should be the thing to sort of come in here and destroy this defence at this point. With the charge of a Knight unit, you're going to deal just irreparable damage to this front line. Yeah, you can see that wasn't even the best of charges, and it still killed around 20 Ironfoot Warriors. More reinforcements going forward. Champions of Naparat as well. Trollshore Axe Throwers. This is going to be the end of the Dwarven front line. Dragon Knights would do well not to linger too long in melee with Erebor Legion though. Ironfoot Pikes trying to hold back the tide of Guardians of Kharndoom. There's the Dragon's Wrath crossbows, and at this point most of the attackers have made their way to this section of the map. A section you don't often see used that much. Usually the defenders, once they lose the sort of outer walls, they will retreat everything back to within Thranduil's walls. I'm really not looking forward to going into the Shadow Realm, but there you go. Carmel's Dragon Knights. Again, bit of a tame charge, but they will still get some kills. Two kills, I should say. 3. The Trollshore Axe Throwers would probably be better suited. It's not really the ideal position to wind up a charge unless you went right over here and charged in, but the Trollshore Axe Throwers with their payload should be able to finish off what's left of this Dwarven front line at this point. Ironfoot Pikes still holding these Guardians of Kharndoom at bay. You can see now that the Erebor infantry is starting to lose their stomach for the fight. Carmel's Dragon Knights sweeping forth. Still some Erebor Legion around there. Maybe going after the Trollshore Axe Throwers. They could be the sort of unit which could be a real problem for the defenders if they're trying to bank up. Still a lot of Gamprin from Rune, so that's yet more AP, which will be bad for the Dwarves to try and deal with. Less of a problem for Linden. This is going to be just about it. I didn't even have to make a cut, really. The only cuts I've made have been bloody crashes. Guardians of Kharndoom still fighting. Wardens of the North actually managed to escape, so Arthedain is still alive in this fight, somehow. As the Dragon Knights sealing the fate of this Erebor Legion as the Easterlings close the trap.
Our army is tiring.
There's the Trollmen, there's the Champions. I'm not surprised the Arthedain army is tiring, to be honest. There's still a lot of resources. I think Rudour in particular have still got some nasty stuff left. They've still got all their pikes, they've still got Foragem Javelins, they've still got their Hranadine Berserkers, Atmor's Troll Hunters, the Witch Arm Slavers are somewhere around here as well, so Rudour would appear to be the attacking army that's still in the best condition. Still the Dragon Knights. The Dragon Knights are not likely to be as useful in the interior. If they become useful, it will be because the attackers have basically already won and the Dragon Knights are in behind the lines, and the lines have been destroyed. That's an interesting addition that I missed. Everyone's favourite, the Witchers. I'm sure that if they get a devastating shot in this map, I'll get like a bunch of dislikes again. Trollmen of Harad. We've got the so this is. I'm surprised the dwarves are still hanging on, to be honest with you. 9 Erebor Legion. So while that's going on, let's go inside and get acclimatized to how dreadful this is going to look. Is there any way I can turn off shadows? Not from here. So this is our new reality. Lovely, isn't it? Still, at least you can see where the units are. The units carrying torches definitely helps things out. Thranduil's throne in the background there in the gloom. But yeah, so Linden have got a lot of units left. Erebor's still got some elites. Blacklock Engineers, if they've still got ammunition, that could be fairly key. But at this point, obviously, the attackers have pulled ahead. Sort of this consistent retreat required sacrifices from the defenders. And actually, this is another move which I'm very confused about. I mean, Fallen Archers are nothing special in melee, they won't win you the battle, but they're still units that you can use to reinforce a front line inside the settlement. Sending them out here basically is sending them to die. You know, if the attackers allow them to kill this unit of Haradrim Spearmen, that will be a mistake from the attackers. You know, like if these Guardians of Khan Doom just push forward right now, those Fallen Archers would be gone very, very quickly. Halberdiers. Dunman Hunters, which got their weapons out. I would assume the attackers are probably going to win this. 5v3s are very difficult for the defenders to win at the best of times. It needs to be basically no mistakes. And there have been mistakes from the defenders. Here we go. So this should be the end of this singular unit of Elven Archers. Haradrim Spearmen, there's also Gamprim, so yeah, this is really the definition of overwhelming force at this point in time. Guardians of Khan Doom actually leaving the area, the Fallen Archers actually routing. Although they're stuck, so they're probably just going to be killed to the last man at this point in time. Still a whole bunch of chanting going on from some of these units. They're not actually fighting to the death, I think they're just stuck. Although this map doesn't have a town centre, I don't think, does it? So routing will actually affect the quote-unquote defenders. Because they won't just route back to a town centre, they'll route off the map. Yes, that's right. My mistake. What's going on here? Ah yes, the Foradrim Javelins. This bug, where their torches fly around spastically. That's a very weird bug, that one. But still, it means you can tell where they are. Kind of gives them away a little bit, which is unfortunate for them, because they're not great under arrow fire. They've got multiple HP, but unlike the Etten Walls Troll Hunters, they're not really for tankiness. All about the damage. What's going on here? Are they going to move forwards? Looks like they're just waiting. I will make a little cut here, actually, because, you know, I've got no desire to wait for these Barrow Wights to slowly cross the bridge. So the battle begins. Wasn't a long cut, but I've got nothing to say about people shambling across the bridge. You know, this single unit of pikes, again, this is a bit of a mistake. Just sending a single unit of pikes, they're not going to stop a push like this. I don't understand why people still do this. You know, especially not, you know, Son of the Dunedain, I know he's played the game a bunch. You know, you should know that sending forward a single unit of pikes like this is not going to do anything. They're just going to get pushed out the way and slaughtered. Meanwhile, High Elven Catapult. That could still be a big factor in this battle. It's going to need to get some solid hits if the defenders are to have any hope. As are the Blacklock Engineers, who have positioned themselves very nicely across the way. Lithlon Pikes, Highborns. Wardens of Elos Tyrian again, so there's a lot of body piercing, there is artillery. But I feel as though, again, that's just the latest in a series of units the defenders have basically wasted. There was that unit of Fallen Archers before, admittedly those two not important, but early on we saw the Arthedain Cavalry get used in a way that wasn't optimal, shall we say. And when you've got a unit like the Knights of Illuminatus, you really need to use them wisely. It's Megal Yerin not having the best time of it. They're trying to push through, but if there's one thing Mirkwood are traditionally not so great at, it's pushing through things with their mass. High Elven Catapult. The Wardens of the North still alive with their longswords. You can see the Hiriak. So we are now basically into the final phase of this fight. It's not quite the final 10k frames just yet. But still, some arrow fire coming in from the Harlinden Guard. They're just standard archers, I should say. No body piercing, no armour piercing. Even so, it's a nice blob that they're going to be firing their arrows into. A lot of range fire coming down on the attackers, as you would expect in this sort of situation. In fact, those Harlingen Guard have got an ideal shot. You can see straight shot. I think the Wardens of the North were just committed in here. Indeed they were. Southron pikemen, again, the attackers will probably try and use their mass to push through. But there are units on the station which should be able to stop them from doing that. I mean, the defenders need to do that, because if they're foolish enough to let the attackers push through and get to their catapult, then it's going to be all over. That was the Blacklock Engineers firing, I'm fairly sure. Yes, it is. Eager to do damage quickly, and to be fair, there are Black Wolves in here, which are a worthwhile target to go after. Just see the amount of range fire. The Wardens of Elos Tyrian firing in here as well, and they're laying waste to this attacking force right now. Control Shore Expos are in here as well. It's a huge amount of damage dealt very, very quickly. Noldorin Guard backing up Mithlon Pikemen is a scary front line. Southron Pikemen are routing. There are Black Wolves in melee at this point, which is exactly where they want to be. Catapult crew. Yeah, the attackers really have no choice but to come in here. There's only one way in. Oh, hello. Those are Muhard Beast Hunters, and they're immediately being focused down after a single volley. With all of this damage that they do, the defenders could turn this around, and then, when they're out of ammunition, rely on the skill of their melee units. That catapult, hopefully it still has ammunition and it's waiting for a good opportunity. Hiri Pang moving forward. There still, of course, are the Witches, which the defenders are going to need to keep some ranged ammunition in reserve for, because, of course, the Witches can turn a match on a dime very, very quickly. Here are the Black Wolves, fighting away in melee, but it is up against the phalanx, pikes at that, so it's not going to be the easiest thing in the world for them to break through. Franadine Berserkers are now forwards as well. They would be another worthwhile unit to go after. Look at all this ranged fire. It's like a Gatling gun. And there are the Black Wolves. You can see just the sprays of blood coming out from them. Big damage here. Muhard Beast Hunters trying to get back into position. Granadine Berserkers, to be fair, have got their shields, so they will stand up to the arrows a little bit better. Still some Forlinder Marines over here as well. And the Forlinder Marines returning fire onto the Muhard Beast Hunters, probably going to rout them, and I don't think they'd come back with a unit size like that. What is that? Forlinder Marines now letting loose their javelins in a big way. That was a waste of a catapult shot, to be honest. These Muhard Beast Hunters, are they in a position that they can't actually be hit? No. Well, that's going to change matters. The Gamp Brim are coming forward. The Gamp Brim, of course, are going to do pretty badly in this situation, where the primary danger to the attackers is going to be ranged firepower. Dragon's Wrath crossbowmen being focused down, very unsurprisingly. Javelins, archers, everything is just focusing them down. This is lethal. Again, if I were the Linden player, though, I wouldn't be using the catapult just yet. I'd be saving that. It's better to use it now than not use it at all, I suppose, but even so. Dragon's Wrath crossbowmen not liking the situation, so they're going to leave. Maybe come back later. There are some Haradrim archers over here as well. 88 of them. I don't know if they're going to last too much longer. The Black Wolves just being held in place by the Dwarf Phalanx. Forlinder Marines presumably at this point out of ammunition, so they're going to be committed to the front line. Adding more numbers, making it even more difficult. Nice hit there on the Haradrim archers. Already wavering. Could be the end of them. They could break. Muhard Beast Hunters still firing their javelins, slowly chipping away at these Ironfoot pikemen. These Gamp Brim are just sort of standing in front of the Linden front line. I think the Wardens of Elos Tyrian are still over there, and it's difficult to tell really. Let's go and have a look. Yes, they are. They're not firing their ammunition at this point, so the defenders are being quite savvy, using some resources but not using others, and that is going to break those Haradrim archers. Good for the defenders, routing off some of these lower tier units. For 52, they might be back. It's hard to say. Granadine pikemen are moving in. They do have a shield value. 1 player has admitted defeat. That might be... I don't know who that would be actually. It might be Harad. Can't imagine it's Angmar because we haven't seen the Witches yet. Another decent hit there from the catapult. Some units back there as well. Noldorin Blade Masters. Another obstacle for the attackers to try and overcome. That's more damage. Harlinden Guard. What is that that's firing? Another unit of Harlinden Guard. Just so much damage the attackers are having to absorb here. So often when we get to this point of Thranduil's Halls, we see the defenders, they don't have the resources left to do this sort of thing. Granadine Berserkers throwing their axes in. They're trying to sort of go around here. You can see that they're trying to focus their force. But with the range support, I don't think that's going to work. We are now more or less into the final 10k frames, so there's still plenty of fight left. As soon as the defenders run out of ammunition, they're going to have to rely on their sort of pure melee prowess, which they do have. But this is a unit they probably did not want to see, the Delupeng, Em and Duia. Attacking rangers. Now at this point in time, you want to focus everything you have. And the Blacklock Engineers, I think, have already targeted them. Indeed they are. I thought it was a crash then when I went into that wall. But the Delupeng need to go if the defenders have any joy here. There's a lot more Gamprim here. There's Ettenmoor's Troll Hunters. There's Trollmen. I mean, at this point, the defenders can scarcely miss. They may as well start using up all their ammunition, trying to take the sting out of this attack, and then commit everything forwards into melee. That is a lethal hit from the catapult as well. The Blacklock Engineers just... I'm going to stay away from that because the frame rate's dropping. They're hitting so many units. The crashing early on kind of bumped me out, but this is more than made up for it. The Delupeng are trying to get some volleys off, but they may be dead by the time they get any significant shots off. Unit of Flagrim coming forward as well. I mean, this is...
The enemy are badly bloodied.
This is bullying at
They
this
have
point.
lost half their men.
The amount of range damage that the attackers have taken coming into this area. And it's still dead even. Flagrim taking some hits in the back. They're not going to make any inroads at all over here. I mean, their AP will be actually useful against an Noldorin Guard. But that's no good. Shaken, unsurprisingly. Mithlon Pikes. Horns of Elos, Tyrion, I assume, are firing. Indeed they are. Some Sons of Durin. Over here as well. Highborns of Erebor being committed forwards at this point. Here come the Harlinden Guard. They're probably out of ammunition at this point. Another nice hit there into the Flagrim. Body piercing of the Rangers, just still projectiles being flung all over the place. Mithlon Marines coming forward, so the defenders still have some javelins that they can use. And they've still got the Noldorin Blade Masters, 2 units of Noldorin Blade Masters. That was a huge investment there, but it could pay off here because I'm not sure the attackers have got stuff that can go toe-to-toe with Dragon Slayers and Noldorin Blade Masters at this point. I mean, it's going to come down to whether or not the attackers can use those Witches. Those Dragon's Wrath crossbows trying to sneak around the side. Ooh, and they could. They could get a shot off here, right along the Dwarven front line, which is starting to fall apart, honestly. Those Mithlon Marines adding their own damage in. Now the Noldorin Blade Masters are being committed forwards. Over this part of the line still holding. Still some more to the north, only 6 of them to be fair. Here are some Ettenmoor's Troll Hunters. This front line is going to hold relatively easily. The Flagrim are unlikely to make too many inroads against this many pikemen. The Ettenmoor's Troll Hunters proving to be a real problem, but receive a catapult shot for their troubles. And still the Wards of Elos Tyrion shooting into the back of this section of line, which is starting to crumble for the dwarves. And now we can see Ettenmoor's Troll Hunters taking some hits from the Mithlon Marines. A little bit hard to see when things are this dark. Aradirith Amon Lank moving forward. The attackers aren't done yet, and they are still taking a significant amount of range damage. All of those javelins just being poured into this area. They're good in melee as well. Here comes another unit of Ranodine pikemen. Noldorin Blade Masters being committed to the front line. They still have some Blacklocks and some Harland and Guard, but at this point the defenders are probably starting to sweat a little bit because there's only so much that they are able to commit forwards. Mithlon pikemen fighting. This flag rim is not going to last too much longer, you would imagine. Another point blank hit from the catapult. Could have done more damage, but still not half bad. Mithlon Marines coming forward. They work as pretty good makeshift line infantry. So the fact that they're still here, certainly a boon. Here comes more javelin fire at point blank, scything into those Aradira. Still those Rangers firing, doing extensive damage to the attackers as they just try and push through this defence, but it's still holding firm. The Dragon Slayers of Arid Mithrin are moving forward at this point, so we're starting to see really the best of what the defenders have to offer. Trying to shut down this catapult, but honestly at this point the catapult probably doesn't have much ammunition left, and it's certainly paid for itself at this point at the very least. Nolder and Blade Masters hacking and slashing their way through pikes, which are struggling to get their pikes down and in formation. Some Southron pikemen moving forward. We haven't seen the Hashari yet, and we haven't seen the Witch Realm Enslavers yet. So there's still that. What's the percentages looking like? Still dead even. I think the defenders are going to need some routes at this point in time, which honestly is entirely possible. Here comes some more Noldorin Guard. That's a unit that I didn't actually notice, so it's good to see them. Mithlon Marines coming in to help out the Noldorin Blade Masters. The Granadine Pikemen not really in the best sort of position to engage for them. Here comes the Hashari and some more Granadine Berserkers. So at this point in time, now that the defenders are running real low on ranged firepower, stuff like the Granadine Berserkers could be invaluable to the attackers if they still have ammunition. It looks like they're being committed to melee. Dragon Slayers moving in. The Hashari's skill will stand them in pretty good stead in this sort of situation, but they're not the tankiest unit in the world, and they're already starting to die off pretty quickly in this mosh pit. You can see from the torches that the Reforged Javelins are in here. There are also the Granadine Rangers in here. The Blacklocks still have ammunition, and that could prove to be extremely important. Getting more and more kills on the attackers as they move forward. That unit of Blacklocks has probably got an ungodly amount of kills. Southron Pikeman victory seems certain over there, really?
The enemy are badly bloodied. They have lost half their
Well,
men.
Wardens of Alos Tyrian are in melee at this point, and there's only so many Mithlon Pikemen, so I suppose the Reforged Javelins are falling back at this point. The Blacklock Engineers might have used up all their ammunition at this point if they're moving forward, but still a good last few volleys from the defenders. Axes just being thrown. Hashari Stalkers are in here as well. That's another ranger unit that the defenders are going to have to try and deal with. And the defenders are pulled ahead by 4%. I'm not sure whether that's going to be enough when all is said and done. Unless there are some routes. There's some wards to the north. Still some Harland and Guard. There's still a unit of Noldorin Blade Masters, so they do have reserves. The Sons of Durin are also over here now, which should flip this back in favour of the defenders. I mean, with all of these elites, the attackers are going to have to utilise their ranged units. I mean, the Witches at this point are exactly the sort of thing which could turn this match around. Still some Rangers. At this point, the attackers have got the ranged advantage, so the defenders are going to have to sort of squeeze them in, make it as difficult as possible for them to use it. Noldorin Blade Masters have taken casualties at this point. They're taking ranged fire as well, but they've been good in melee. Noldorin Guard. Catapult crew's still alive? Possibly not, but I think the catapult's used up its ammunition anyway. More Hashari coming forward. It's going to be close. Still a 4% difference. I don't know, I think the elites for the defenders could actually see them through here. It's the style of the engagement as well. The attackers are caught like a rat in a trap. They can't really utilise their ranged units as well as they'd want. They've still got some good units, Hashari, Trollmen, The champions of Nafrat, I think, are in here still. I saw their name pop up briefly. I don't know how many of them are actually left. 63. Southron pikemen, but you know, you've still got dwarven elites. There goes a general. That, I think, was the Argwady Nunway, so that could have been Thranduil trying to reclaim his throne with the help of evil. But he was slain. But with units like the Dragon Slayers, Sons of Durin, and the Noldorin Blade Masters, the Wardens of the North are still around here somewhere, I think. They're now being committed forward, so there's only 6 of them, but Arthedain still have a part to play, potentially. Well, here comes the Dragon Knights. I'm not sure what the Dragon Knights can do here, because, I mean, there's still pole arms all throughout this area. Mithlon pikes, Ironfoot units. They can try and sort of force path their way through, but with the line this thick, I imagine they would just be dead before they got through. Might be worthwhile, though, because if they did manage to get through, the Hammer and Anvil would be devastating. They're trying, you can see. Section of line without any pole arms either. I mean, the Noldorin Blade Masters are over here, so you don't want to linger too long, if you can help it. There's still another unit of Noldorin Blade Masters back here, to be fair. Ironfoot pikemen. I think the defenders are going to take it, you know. Unless the Witches come out of nowhere. Unless it was the Angmar player that committed defeat. I think it was. That's baffling to me. Unless his Witches died. The Witches are the sort of thing which can die when you don't even notice. Very much like the Nazgul. So it's very possible that happened. On the initial advances, maybe they got shot by the Blackhawk Engineers in through the gate. But the Dragon Knights are actually going to get stuck here, because now the Noldorin Blade Masters are going to shut the door on them. And they're not going to be able to force path their way through another unit of Noldorin Blade Masters, I fear. Trying to shoot at point blank, someone is. The Hashari Stalkers. Southron pikemen still fighting hard, but yeah, I think the defenders are going to take it. They're pulling further ahead. Actually, no, they're not. Still 6%, but the attackers aren't turning this around.
Our ally lies dead. Without their general, they may lose heart and flee.
I don't know, that probably was the Erebor general, because the Dragon Slayers have taken some damage and they're like right here on the front. The Hashari are fighting well.
In our favour. From such tidings does victory emerge.
Yeah, I don't see how the attackers can win this at this point in time. There are the Wardens of the North, still alive, not in the fight though. I mean, at this point you may as well commit yourself forward. Be part of the victory. There's still 3k frames left, so it's not like the attackers are going to go quietly into that good night, but that was a brutal final defense. Having to advance into a perfectly sort of positioned shot, multiple body-piercing projectile units from multiple sides, multiple javelin units, multiple regular archers, and having to fight your way through a Dwarven and Linden phalanx. Even with the numbers advantage the attackers had, that was nasty for them. And in a 5v3, the 3 have won. That's a rarity, that is. And this is the Halloween special, of course. So it probably will be out before Halloween, to be honest with you, because with how things are going, you know, by the end of October I'll probably be doing 0.97 stuff. And I'm fairly sure that this is one that people are going to want to see, even with the slightly darkened interior, even with the crashing issues that I had early on. We're still good. What is this? Foragem Javelins are coming back. Probably the last hope for the attackers, although at this point in time, even that will not save them. Yeah, now they're starting to pull. No, they're still not pulling further ahead. Still 6%. What sorcery is this? And the Dragon Knights are still alive, so they haven't actually...
The enemy general lies dead.
That could have been the Runic General, it's really hard to tell. So everything is shrouded in darkness, all the torches are over here. There goes the Runic General. The Noldorin Blade Masters bring him down with their big notched, curved greatswords. Now we're starting to see the epic defeats. It's mainly Linden left, to be honest with you. There's a few elite Dwarven units like the Highborns, the Sons of Durin are in here somewhere as well, I think. Arthedain obviously just have their Wardens of the North left alive, who I think are in here as well. But yeah, well played from the defenders. They turned that around nicely. Because early on I feared that they were wasting too many of their units, and in a 5v3, usually if you waste even a single unit, you've made life too difficult for yourself. But as it is, this final stand was so well constructed, in such an ideal position with such powerful units, that the attackers really couldn't do anything. Even with the resources they had witches, which were killed at some point, I assume. They had, you know, javelins of their own, axe throwers, Franadine berserkers and the like. You know, they even had Delupeng, Em and Dwyer. They had their own rangers, which they never could get into position, and that's one thing which I do praise the defenders for, using their ammunition here in this final stand really, really wisely. Because they didn't just dump it all immediately and try and kill as much as they could. They rationed it out. They chose their targets. The Blacklocks picked their targets well. The Wardens of Elos Tyrian did. And that meant that they had ammunition still when the attackers were starting to send forward some of their dangerous units, like the Franadine berserkers, like the Delupeng, Em and Dwyer. There goes a general. So yeah, evil this day has not won. Thranduil, who joined the dark side, they probably promised him like better hair products or something, and he failed. So Mirkwood is now no longer his. Linden expanding their reach. Very well played though. I like how aggressive Arthedain was at the start as well, even if it did lead to some wastage. But ultimately maybe it was a ploy. Maybe being aggressive like that was what they needed to then retreat back into this town centre with all of these resources. Sort of cutting out the middle section of the battlefield, which is where usually the majority of the battle takes place, and instead choosing to defend the halls.
It's time to press the attack.
So it's really at this point just the Foragem Javelins and a few Hashari Stalkers that are left, slowly but surely being bled out. Very good fight this, even with the even with the crashing issues. It turned it around for me in the late game, and that's why I love Reforged, even if it's a pain in the ass to record sometimes. This is exactly the sort of battle I like to see. Other players have missed defeat, so it really is just the Foragem Javelins at this point. 38 of them remaining. They're AP, so they're not ideally suited for taking on Noldorin Blade Masters and the like. I would imagine that the Dwarves have probably got the most kills in this battle, them or Linden. Arthedain's probably lagging behind a little bit, purely because they were the ones that had to sort of take the initial brunt of the casualties on the outer defence. There we go.
Victory.
A clear victory? Yeah, I suppose it was. A 7% difference in the end, so the defenders did push it back a further point. Actually, no, Arthedain got the most kills. That does surprise me. I thought that sort of final position with the Blacklocks and the Wardens of Elos Tyrian would have given that to the Elves and Erebor, but I guess the initial engagements with the lower tier units were what gave Arthedain a bigger kill count. Rune getting the most for the attackers doesn't... well, I kind of would have expected that. Actually, yeah, I guess Rune, they had the most balanced army overall. Angmar were the ones that died off first. Harad, they were probably putting a lot of stock in their Mumakil, and when the Mumakil died so quickly, that was kind of unfortunate for them. Let's see, so Woods of the North getting a lot. The Grey Company did really well. And as I said, I did notice the Grey Company. They were up on a hill, essentially acting as just foot rangers. And then they were sort of getting some extra kills from their charges. The Troll Slayers doing okay for themselves. Arthedain Marksmen doing pretty well across the board for a standard unit of archers, getting more in fact than the Rangers. But a good spread of kills. That was a balanced performance. Really, it was only the Grey Company that were head and shoulders above the rest of the Arthedain army. Obviously, though, the MVPs, I have to say, were the Blacklock Engineers and the Wardens of Elos Tyrian. Both of those units, perfect positioning. That body piercing just destroyed the attackers at the end. There was really... they had no choice but to advance forward and hope they could just tank the damage. But in the end, the defenders used their ammunition wisely enough to the point where they couldn't tank all that damage. So very well played to the 3 defenders. Well played to the 5 attackers as well. They didn't really do all that much wrong. You know, the only thing I can say, you know, maybe they could have... I don't know, the Mumakil, they had to be committed to the outside. I mean, I don't think they'd fit inside the settlement. So, yeah, I mean, the Mumakil had to be committed at that point. It was just unfortunate that all of those pikes and ranged units were there to focus them down. So that's not really Tundra's Fox's fault. Yeah, very well played. Very enjoyable indeed. I hope you enjoyed this. This will be sort of the Halloween/October special. I'm not sure what will be next, honestly. It's kind of in flux at the minute because I'm just sort of working my way through what I have of the 0.96 stuff. And then at some undetermined point we'll start to move into some 0.97, but that will of course necessitate me being in some stuff, and obviously my time for that is relatively limited, so the transition might be a little bit bumpy, which is why I'm going to try and sort of build up a stockpile of 0.96 stuff that I've got recorded and rendered so I can upload that if needed. But yeah, we'll see. I hope you enjoyed this regardless as much as I did, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.